Hello, hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? This is Dr. Yam, your Keep It Simple coach for Busy 9 to 5ers Hive. And most importantly, we are following through on our 5-day challenge, Write Your Biz Journal, but rather write your biz story. And how is it that you can use your own stories to captivate and engage others for those of you who are aspiring, as well as for you who are just launching your new business. So welcome, welcome, welcome to everyone. I want to give everybody a quick moment to connect and to make sure that you can send your comments. If you haven't already done so, give me a thumbs up or send some emoji up inside of the comments. You'll have an opportunity to ask your questions as always as we begin on our session. So do know that you can post here inside of the Facebook groups. Simply type into the comments and I'll be able to see them for you. Make sure, of course, I am coming through using StreamYard, so make sure you accept StreamYard so that you will then have your questions seen by me and I'll be able to post them up and take them as we continue on. So today, we are starting into day 2 of our 5-day challenge. And so now we're in the process of what? The writing. So let's be about the writing. Okay, let me get us over here. All righty, so how you guys doing? We're going to get started right in. So if you haven't already done so, if you got your emails this morning, you should have gotten a little bit of a mindset and got your heads all calibrated in how we are going to be pursuing the second part of our step, which is now that you've made a decision, and now we're going to get into the writing part of it, the kind of the meat and potatoes, I like to call it. And this is going to take a little bit of time, particularly if that's not something that you're accustomed to doing. But again, we're not writing a dissertation. We're not writing a 100-page book. We're writing a simple story about you. And so tonight, what I thought would be important is to really give you some strategies, things that you can think about. I know that you have an idea in your head, and you've maybe even told stories before. They may not have been as crafty and as creative and compelling as they can be. So tonight, I'm going to give you some tools and strategies to utilize that you can start to carve out your story better. And then the most important thing about writing a story is that it needs to reflect who you are and what you do. And so those are going to be some of the things we're going to connect on today. So with nothing else to be said, I'm going to pop up my screen here. I think we're good. And let me turn us on. Hold on one sec. There we go. And there we go. And then there we really go. All righty. So everyone should be able to see the screen. Give me a heads up if you can or cannot do that you can hear me okay. I got my mic. And let me just make sure inside of the group on my other device, we're going to give me a heads up, thumbs up that we're good there. All right, great. So again, I want to thank everyone for coming into day 2 of the 5-day challenge. And tonight is going to be our focus on writing your story. So again, in our prior session, the conversation was really focused on the why behind what is great about storytelling, and also things that you want to consider and what are some exemplars. We went through some examples of what those kind of stories could look like based on some successful entrepreneurs that are out there that can kind of give you an idea. And now that, and in your email, you also had an opportunity to really, again, start reflecting and just start back. This is not a race. I don't expect everything to be done at the end of the 5 days. However, get as much done as you possibly can, because again, this is about you and how you're able to make better connections with your intended audience, and the way in which you're going to be able to do that, so that not only are you going to be able to write that story, the next step is how you're going to tell that story. And that's the fun stuff to me. And you're going to be able to tell it in a couple different ways. So I'm really excited to see how you choose to tell your story, because it's all about a comfort zone. So yes, it's always good to have a little nudge, boink, boink, but at the same time, you do want to be able to be in your comfort zone and be able to get better at that. So, and again, pushing buttons or stretching yourself, that's always great when it comes to being an entrepreneur. You want to be able to know and grow. So in this section, again, you're going to actually write your story. Now, this may sound simple enough, but it is hard sometimes for people to really realize to writing their story. Now, the reason for that is that simply it requires self-reflection. And if it in our kind of like, stressed out, overworked modern day lives, most of us just aren't used to spending that time of self-reflection. And so, how do you go about reflecting on yourself when you're basically not accustomed to doing so? And I know that for many of us, we're so consumed with the doing, 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 doing that it does become a little bit of you might say, oh my gosh, I gotta do this. It's like something else to do. And I don't want you to feel that way. I do want you to take into account that this is part of your marketing. This is a part of your branding steps. And in particular, for those of you who are aspiring entrepreneurs and you haven't launched your business yet, this is critical for you. Why? Because your personal brand is the first step in building out your business. And you want to make sure that you come out and make your debut as strong as possible. So spending this time now to carve out the story that you have to tell your potential customers so that they can not only know, like, and trust you, but trust you enough to want to engage with you in your product or your service. And so either one of those. And so this is a critical step in the process. And I know many of you may not actually realize or know enough about it, but this is part of a critical step that many people miss. And so the practices that you may want to consider doing, like maybe meditating, maybe taking some yoga, taking a nature walk, spending time with some close friends so that you can have a reflection on your life and basically other things that you can able to do to determine, what's going to connect with not connect from within as well as connecting with others. So a good way to get started in getting in touch with yourself is simply through journaling. Now, in our Facebook group inside of Busy 9 to 5ers, I really, really stress this a lot. In fact, I got my, here we go. Journaling is something that you want to get used to doing on a daily basis. This is mine. And I switch these up. And it's something, again, to kind of capture your thoughts. So if you're, you not have to be looking at a calendar and setting it aside to write it, but sometimes some people want to do to make that a part of the day, something they do at the beginning of the day, maybe it's something they do at the end of the day. But journaling is a great way. And journaling doesn't have to be, again, a lot of writing, as it is just not kind of like just capturing your thoughts. It could be in an outline. It could be pictures. It could even be video. It's just all how you want it. There's no rules when it comes to journaling. So that's the great thing. But deciding on a time and a place in which you do that may be important to you. So you want to just block out some time and make sure that that happens, that you're doing so, and that you're just writing in your journal. And you find a place where you're not going to have any of those distractions. And, turn off your phone, grab a cup of tea, step outside, don't do it in your workspace, things like that. Just kind of think about how you can go about journaling. All right, let's just make sure something here. All right, there we go. All right, so now, with that said, let's take our storytelling on and get to the writing, shall we? So again, you can focus on your business or your organization, the type of business that you're getting ready to start or have started, and let the words flow. Again, you can journal in a more focused way so that you can use these questions to kind of use them as prompts, is what we like to call it. We do a lot of this inside of our education world, and also when I'm doing group coaching and asking people to kind of get their thoughts down on paper. And a prompt is that just simply asking a question is a prompt. And so here are 4 prompts that help writers start the juices flowing and get something concrete down on paper. So the first one is, why do you do the work that you do? What compels you to engage in the level of work that you either aspire to do or you are doing right now? That's a simple question. And these are, again, prompts that help you to craft and get content captured in order for you to write your story. So, question number one, why do you do the work that you do? Everyone has a why. And so, what is it? What is your why in writing that down? And again, simple. Um, you can simply outline it, you can draw it, you can mind map, whatever makes you happy. No rules. All right. The next question is, well, how does your values align with the work that you do? Remember the compelling story around how in the case of let's see which one. The values that were set, like when we talked about the social worker in the last session, right? That there was she kind of questioned whether or not what she was the career she had entered into was really what was meant for her. And then out of a circumstance and an interaction with the person and how she responded so naturally to that person in need, there was confirmation, as we like to say, that yes, I am doing and it does align with my values, so that I hold things to a certain standard that I'm willing to kind of like take the sword for, as we like to call, draw my line in the sand. So, what are the values and are they aligned with the things that you are doing right now? That's another question prompt for you to write. And then answering that question is what helps you to build your story one after the other. So, your third question you would ask yourself is, well, what is the vision for your life? How do you see things panning out for yourself? Now, you can have multiple visions, and of course, you're gonna experience life in phases, so we like to call it. So, but how do you see your life unfolding if all were perfect in the world? And we know it's not, but if all things were controlled up to you, what would that look like? What's that vision for your life? And then how is it that what you're doing is working alongside that? Is going to be part of that as well. So then your fourth prompt is, how does your life vision intersect with your work vision? And remember, as entrepreneurs, we typically, in many instances, we traveled down the highway of going to school, getting a skill, going to work for other people. And then we get that kind of, this ain't for me. And then we decide that I want to do something else. So, how does the life vision and your work vision and your values all kind of come together? How do they intersect? And does one life align with the other? So, that's your other fourth prompt. These are critical questions that allow you to start to really carve out your story. And like I said, you may have stories that may be that come out of an instance, a circumstance, a time and a set in a time and a place. Those are great. These are fundamental in your formulating a story. Now, in writing your story, you're going to think about. You'll need to practice that self-reflection that I talked about. So again, um, meditation, yoga, time in nature, time with your friends. Again, that regular journaling, and do it in a time that is not going to be a distraction between you and the other person, because your story is also going to evolve. We're just going to take the snapshot in time this week for you to kind of focus on some stories and occurrences or experiences that you had as you either in your work family life that is causing you to want to enter into entrepreneurship, and or you've already launched, and then these are stories that you want to be able to tell so that you can make those connections at a deeper level with your potential customers and your current customers for that matter. You kind of need to step back and think, for those of you who have already launched your business, is that, do people really know you? Do they know you enough that they say they can talk about you? That's the type of know, liking, and trusting is that they're at that like that they like you enough that they're willing to even talk about you when you're not there because they've already made a connection that they know enough about you. Say, yeah, I know that guy. I know that girl. She does this. That's the connection you want to be because they connected with you at a personal level that there was something about your story and what you do for others and what you have the potential to do for them is similar. Or you may have had even as simple as a similar upbringing. That's a connection. If you grew up skiing on a with your family in a very routine basis, and another person's like, oh, I skied with my parents, they took us out often, then that's a connection. People are willing to say, well, we have something in common, and you're able to kind of carry on from that matter. But do this in as a constructive way as possible. Now, when you think about your vision, think about your experience and then ask yourself the why again in that question and try to uncover the reasons for the decisions you made or the steps you took when writing your story. Consider each major failure, each major um, success, each major change. There could be a realization, that kind of aha epiphany moment. It could be an experience that kind of led to results that you didn't maybe expect or you did expect because you did the proper due diligence and that you had an impact on what you're doing today. And then you also want to talk about the moment when you knew for certain that you needed to pursue that career or that path that you're on today. That's another decision making moment. Remember, we talk about that hope that being able to um, goodness, where's my note? Compile in making that choice point. Excuse me. You also want to think about an event or a situation that was a key turn point in your life. What was that like? What are some things that you kind of pause and you say you made a 180 based on a certain circumstances? In my case with my story, it's around the fact that I had an unfortunate set of circumstances that pushed me into entrepreneurship. Not that I didn't have the burn or the bug, as we like to call it. I've always had it, but at the same time, there were certain circumstances that didn't afford me a luxury of time, and I needed to be able to go into recovery and into re-engineering my life in such a way that one, I could take care of myself and my family as well, and be able to carry on because at the end of the day we got some bills to pay and we've got responsibilities and we also have our own vision for our life and how we see it carrying out and still wanting to make that happen. You also want to think about and talk about in your story, talk about a principle that you believe in fundamentally that to who you are and what you do, that nothing could ever change your mind on it. What would that be? Um, you may also want to share and talk about a time when a mentor or a teacher or a coach, someone who influenced you and how that contributed to who you are today. I could share with you a story with respect to I was kind of in my early years of profession as being a professional. And there was an opportunity. I had gone in for a job review, as I had done it many times before. And I was in a new enterprise, and I had gotten this new supervisor. So that person really didn't know me very well, but somehow they decided to have an annual review and having not really worked with me. So I, took it all in stride. But it was such a negative experience and it took me down it really did. It kind of like really knocked me on my knees in a sense because I had just never felt so low at that point in time. And I just was like, is this what my life is going to be? Because this person had basically just pointed out nothing but negative, negative, negative again. And I'm thinking, but where are you getting this from? You barely know me and you don't even work with me. And it wasn't until I had a chance to sit with a mentor of mine, good friend, and a pastor, and he basically, I'll never forget it. He made the statement that this is just a moment in time. It does not define you. It doesn't define you. In that post, and don't let that instance or that person define who you are. It is simply a moment in time. It will come and it will go. And it was with that that I, said, okay, I can do that. I can, brush it off. We did fix the situation, just so we're clear. We did get that amended. And but I understood then that yes, there's a time and a place for people to give feedback, and critical feedback is fine. It is, however, it was just a little disheartening of an experience, but I moved past it. But it was that moment in time that I decided that I wasn't going to let anyone else define who I was or what I did, and that you just can, don't let, and the person who was was doing the evaluation was, ended up leaving anyway. So that tells you something. So anyway, so again, talk about your experiences that kind of help you define the reasons why you started doing what you're doing, and then that reinforcing that lifestyle that you want to have to do. Okay. And again, use your failures, use your successes, and you use your changes. Those are all going to be part of compelling. And it's also about being authentic with yourself. So failure is good. That's another way people connect it, because if you're coming across as Miss, cutie pie, and I'm perfect and I look perfect, I sound perfect, I do perfect, people get turned off by that, because it was like, you're not real. It's like, how real is that? You know, being transparent is, for some people, it may not be something that you're comfortable doing. However, I will share with you that allowing people to know and understand who you are and what you do and what you stand for, you will have earned way more respect than simply putting on airs, as I like to call it. And if you're bringing two personalities to your life, then you're creating two jobs, I like to call it. You're creating two jobs. And now you got two people you got to you got to take care of, and put on airs, and you on camera, you one person, but in real life you're somebody else. What's the point in that? Be authentic, be true to yourself, and then you'll be able to connect with real good stories. So again, when we talk about the structure to your story, now we're getting into some of the meat and potatoes. The first half, what we just talked about, was all the pieces and parts, things that you can think about to bring inside of your story. Now we got to organize your story. So when you're organizing your story, there's going to be three key elements. We talked about and touched on it a little bit yesterday, but this is also, it speaks to a sequencing as well. So why stories? Again, we like to learn. Stories is how we learn to make choices. And stories are how we learn to assess the moral and the emotional resources that we need to face uncertainty, the unknown, and the unexpected. And so because stories can speak the language and emotions, the language is what you're being able to speak to the heart. You get to the head, then you go to the heart. And that's teaching us not only that we know what we ought to be doing or how we ought to act, but we also can be inspired, encouraging people to act. And so because of the resources that you have on the emotional side, it's what you're able to draw in on your values, those values, those kind of, again, die on the sword principles that you have. And it's those stories that is going to help you to translate your values into actions. And so once you have identified the story that you're going to want to tell, then you'll need to structure your stories. And the way you're going to structure your stories is that no matter what type of story that you have, remember the 10 that we went over in the prior session, there's three key elements. So there's the challenge. Basically, the story begins with that unexpected challenge that you must pay attention to. We used to call it, well, we still call it in K-12, we call it like the hook, right? What's that compelling story that kind of gets you started at the very beginning? What was the challenge that you faced? and start with that state. So you want to start with just the challenge. And again, your story could be as quick as short as 3 sentences. The challenge, the choice, the outcome. Now you want to be a little bit more meatier than that because you want to be able to repurpose your content as well. Now, the next one is your choice. Now, because you faced your challenge, then the decision making comes into play. You must make a choice as to whether you were that you may have been unprepared to make because usually you don't expect a challenge necessarily, right? So then that becomes a choice. What did you choose to do as it relates to that? And then third, you're going to want to share the outcome as a result of the choice that you made leads to an outcome. And then the outcome is going to teach you an important lesson. So when you think about that childhood story book that we shared with each other, when you think about that story, what was the challenge? What was the choice? There was some decision made, and then what was the outcome? Even as simple as the one that was Cinderella, there was a challenge, right? She was the stepdaughter, and none of the the stepmother and the stepsisters, they didn't like her. That was a challenge, and so she was just trying to stay alive. And then the choice was, do I go to the ball? Do I not go to the ball? Do I tell the truth when the shoe comes to get put on my foot? And then what's the outcome? I get to get into that chariot and zoom away with my prince. I mean, that's a real simplified childhood version of it, but still, the format still remains the same. So here's some examples. So you make a change, maybe a choice maybe to give up the profit margin and high sales in order to offer something that make you feel good and also will allow you to sleep at night. That could be a challenge and a choice as an outcome. When you're in the order of business, some people choose to be more philanthropic in their desires to reach and meet more people's needs. So then the outcome for you is that you discovered that a high demand of your socially responsible coffee, maybe, after all, and it also helps you to grow your business. So people watch what you do and watch what you say. And so if you made this conscious effort, you're like, we're going to take a smaller margin, but we're going to do it for the greater good. And we're going to be able to reach more people in the masses as a result of it. And when people hear that story, that what you were willing to do, guess what? They want to be a part of that. They want to help you be successful. And on top of that, your product's pretty darn good at the same time. So all in all, this is a win-win. So you have that. Now, like I said earlier, when we talk about your challenges, don't think of everything as being a misfortune. It could be the challenge that you chose to climb Kilimanjaro, right? And that's a challenge, but everything doesn't have to be about a defeatist part. So you want to be able to just make it a good story so that you're going to make other people feel inspired and feel good. But your structure, what's your challenge? What's your choice? What's your outcome? So think about the stories that you have made that list off from last week. Last night rather. And then determine what was the challenge, what was the choice, what was that, and organize it that way. Just chunk it back out. Now for emotions, which is where you're really trying to get to the heart of things, is that emotions inform us is how we value ourselves, how we internalize the values in ourselves, I should say, in others and as well as in the world, and enables us to have that expression of that what motivates you to connect your values with others. And so a story draws on people's emotions and then shows those values and in action in order to help people feel what matters to them and helps them rather than to think or be told what's mattered to them. So when you can get to the heart of your listener, then you're making an impact. And it's because of those stories are allowing you to express those values, not as something abstract. These are again those lived experiences, and then they have the power to move people. That's the action. So when people tell a story and then they get share the emotional pivotal moments and how you're making a connection, and then they say, and now give to this program, if that's the type, if you're a not-for-profit. And then, or it's like, and if this really helps, it helped me and it's helping these other people, certainly it might be able to help you. And that's again where testimonies can come into play as well. But it's that people are taking action, you've made a personal connection with them. They're willing now to take action. Again, know, like, trust. Now, here's a cool part when you're structuring your story, as another example, is let's say, for instance, you work at a real estate agency and you started to feel a little frustrated. It seems like the methods for selling that your coworkers used were ineffective, at least in your eyes. They were ineffective and not entirely ethical. And so you start wondering if you can advance your career at this agency, or is there simply a better way? And so your challenge is to find this better way. Oops, sorry. And after some particular frustrating days, you realize you simply can't take it anymore. And so you don't have another option but to strike out on your own. And that's the choice that you chose to make, because it was like, do I continue to do this and I don't feel good about myself because I don't like this pressure and I don't like the practices. That's not me. So do I stay and be miserable, or do I go and venture out on my own and just take the risk as the entrepreneur that you are? And so the outcome, because remember, choice, challenge, choice, outcome. What's the outcome? The outcome is now you run a successful real estate firm agency on your own, and it puts your clients, and you put your clients' interests first. That's your principle. So if your story involves a future vision, then it may be that it's a challenge that you or the world is facing right now. And then in your case, your change is going to be how you're going to make it now through your business on those intended outcomes with your future vision. And we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday. So again, charities and organizations typically fall into that line of how they're telling their story. So challenge, choice, outcome. And along the line is on the, keeping everything within inside of the principles, your moral values are all part of those connectors. Again, emotional levels. Make sense? Okay. Now, the elements of a good story. The first is specificity. When you make your story as specific as possible, remember you're telling a story and you want to start planting seeds in people's heads so they can start to imagine it. Unless you're making it a movie and it's very visual, it may not be something that they necessarily will see, that, but they will hear. But the more specific you can tell the reader the when and the where this thing, that particular incident happened, the better. Describe the setting to them. Make any story a good story is try to use the five senses, right? The more you can. So if you can share, what did it look like? What did it smell like? What did it feel like? What did they look like? Where were you at? Was there a temperature? Where is it the fall, the winter, the spring? Anything along those lines. Give as much detail as you possibly can. Just note them down, make bullets, but be as specific as possible about the story setting. And again, you're writing for your audience. So in this particular case, although you may be writing about yourself, you do want to look at the different, you'll look at your different potential stories that you have about your life and your identity and what's going to be important in regarding your emotional and the values of the audience. And you might need to tweak it a bit for each different type of audience. And then personal, but not too personal. You want to make sure that your story makes a connection at a personal level, but you shouldn't be giving away like things that are going to offend other people. and go through your story after it's written and look for things that could potentially be kind of what we call like oversharing, like TMI, too much information. So make it useful by being specific, making sure that you're working within the context of the audience, and then people, you want to be able that people can identify. Here's an example. So if you're a recovering alcoholic and it's part of your stories challenge, and you might share a few things that you did when you were drunk, such as maybe neglecting your family or gambling away money, but you don't want to get so specific in the things that were truly horrible, creepy, or alienating. Okay. So the other one is identify what we call the protagonist. Every good story has a main character that you're going to identify with, right? So there was Cinderella, right, in the storyland. There was Cinderella, but there were all the main characters. Cinderella was the main character. So this is that main character in the story to whom you're going to identify with the most. So in their case, it's going to be you. You are the protagonist. So again, be open and honest about your past. Pull in useful ideas for the reader. So again, life lessons that you learned and you've experienced yourself. And then think about the key people who's influenced you along the way to, again, that see the world and in the work that you're doing. These are going to be the key elements to a good story. Now, you've got a lot of information. And so hopefully between now deciding that remember you had that huge list of stories that you created, that you've already been telling people, all these different instances that happened in your life, from back in college to your first job to, things that kind of caused you to end up where you are now, what you're doing or what you aspire to do. Maybe if you were in the busy 9 to 5 hive and you're watching and you're working in your 9 to 5, was there something compelling that happened in your workplace that was like, I really need to really start thinking about my exit strategy because this right here is not for me. And what was that occurrence? What did that look like? Were you sitting in a meeting? Were you serving a customer? And they just didn't treat you with any level of respect, but because you had mouths to feed, you had to kind of bite your tongue. But then in your head, it was like, if I could, I would, but I can't, so I won't. We've all kind of experienced that, right? So, share those whys. So remember, use the why questions and the story prompts that I've shared with you. You have them in your handout as well. And if you don't, let me know. And hold on one sec. And I see a question pop up, so give me 1 sec. Review the stories that you had listed from your session 2 and highlight and note down where you can enhance the stories that you are already doing. So you don't have to start from scratch. Or as a result of today, you may have decided, I thought about this and it popped up. Just jot them down. That's why your journal is so important. These little stories and these instances, things that come up, you can reflect back. That's the great thing about your journals. But for now, just keeping it focused and simple, I want you just to select one idea from your list, and I want you to draft out your personal story using the challenge, the choice, and the outcome model. Keep it simple. Okay, one story. I know you might have lots of them. Pick one and draft it out using the outline. Challenge, choice, outcome. And post that inside of the Facebook group and share it so we can see where you're coming from. All right. Like I said, I want you to pick 3 stories ultimately, but you're only going to focus right now on the one to get that out front, right? And refining that one story. And then you'll be able to then maybe tweak that story so that you can have 3 different versions of the story, or even just 3 totally different stories. It's totally up to you. But right now, we're just going to focus on one for the time that we have together. So that's your homework for tonight. Take action on that. Use the framework, ask the questions why, follow the framework, challenge, choice, outcome, and you're done. And then tomorrow, we're going to talk about telling your story and how that can look and in the different formats, because I have some real goodies for you. And I got a goodie for you coming your way. So please show up for the next session. And let's pop back over to, let's see here. Dismiss. There we go. All right. So again, I hope you guys got a lot out of today's session. We're in the writing mode of telling your story for your business and your personal brand. And so hopefully these strategies and thinking prompts are going to help you to get to crafting the best, one of many stories that you're going to be able to tell for your business. So this is Dr. Yam. I am your Keep It Simple coach. Thank you again. We'll see each other on the next session for Write Your Biz Story for your new and upcoming or brand story. Until next time, let's get busy. Take care. Bye-bye.